Libya's uprising spreads to the capital, Tripoli, and the son of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi appeared on state television warning of civil war. Seif al-Islam says his father will remain in power and fully backed by the army. What's behind these latest statements as thousands of protesters call for his father to step down? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Hazem Sika. The uprising in Libya appears to be growing by the day and represents the biggest challenge to leader Muammar Gaddafi's 42 years in power. Recent reports from Libya show that the regime stands on very shaky ground. The unrest has spread to the capital, Tripoli, for the first time since protests began. The second largest city of Benghazi is reportedly out of government control. Some protesters have seized military bases, tanks and weapons. And a major tribe in Libya was reported to have turned against Gaddafi. And a number of Libyan diplomats resigned their posts in protest for using force against demonstrators. In the regime's first comment on the fifth day of demonstrations, Gaddafi's son, Seif al-Islam, appeared on state television Sunday night offering significant political reforms. But he also vowed that the regime would, in his words, fight to the last bullet against what he called seditious elements. He put only two choices in front of the people, either to accept reforms or be ready for civil war. This is some of what he had to say.
We have two choices. Tomorrow we should let our own minds control our action, stop bloodshed and stand together for Libya. Believe me, this is a very rare opportunity so that we can have enormous reforms in Libya without destroying our country and without any losses. Otherwise, forget reforms, forget democracy, forget constitution, and the country will be slid into civil war.
Well, joining us now to talk more about this are our three guests. In London, Abu Bakr Deghais, he's a Libyan human rights activist. In Vienna, Hans Kirchler, he was the official UN observer at the Lockerbie trial and is president of the International Progress Organization. And in Jerusalem, Dana Moss, an adjunct fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Thank you to all three of you for joining us. Abu Bakr Deghais, if I could start with you in London. What did you make of those comments by Seif al-Islam? Does it smack of desperation?
It is, and the worrying part of it, to me, it only contained hidden threats to the Libyan people. From the beginning till the end, he was threatening civil war, poverty, years of no service, no oil could be exported. Again, you know, we see the son, like his father, you know, wanting to rule or continue his father's rule on the fear of the people. But I think he miscalculated. People have broken the fear. People are out, are determined to do, you know, what is the right thing, which the Libyans should have done for, 40 years now. The rage and the anger cannot be maintained in this way. It cannot be contained by threatening people again and again.
So do you believe he's miscalculated the will of people in Libya? Will this fan the uprising even more?
Oh yes, definitely. You know, the people are very determined. They've proven that, you know, by coming out on the streets. And this is a huge, huge step, you know, in Libya for people to come out openly. You're talking about a place where a person cannot even whisper against Gaddafi, where nearly 1/3 of the population are spies for Gaddafi, where, you know, the trust between people is no longer didn't exist. You know, people don't discuss politics. People don't mention his name in a bad way or a negative way. People have to all the time lie and pretend they love him and you know, shout with his name being praised. But to see the Libyans in Tripoli, you know, the capital, out on the streets shouting down, down with Gaddafi, and the people want the end of this regime. That tells you that the Libyans are ready. The Libyans will do anything, will sacrifice anything to have the freedom in their hands and the choice, to have the basic right, and that is to choose their representatives and to have the direction of their life in their hands, not in Gaddafi's hand anymore.
Hans Kochler, this is by far the most violent response we've seen from any of the Arab uprisings of recent weeks. Do you believe them when they say that Gaddafi will fight to the last man standing?
It is hard for me to judge from here, and I'm not a Libyan, but anyhow, that conveys the impression that there is no readiness on the part of the Libyan government to enter into negotiations about a settlement of that or about a peaceful arrangement of that situation.
Do you think that there's any leverage perhaps that Libya's that any of the Western countries, particularly in the European Union, can do in all of this?
My impression is that the Western countries, and in particular the United Kingdom, are already trying to exert some influence. For me, there is no other way to interpret yesterday's telephone call from the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom to the son of the Libyan leader. They have good, rather long-standing now personal contacts with him, and this again is my impression, they did favor now over several years this son as a successor in Libya. But I think now it is too late for the West to try to steer the events in one or the other direction. And it is also not appropriate after this long history of a patronizing attitude by the Western countries, particularly the UK and the US, vis-à-vis the Arab world, and in this particular case, Libya. I think it is totally counterproductive if one now would create the impression that it is the West or Europe that is now trying to choose a successor. It is to be left now in the hands of the Libyan people. That's the state of affairs that has been reached now.
Let's put that to Dana Moss then in Jerusalem. Is this essentially in the hands of the Libyan people now? There's nothing really anyone else can do?
Well, the US and the UK, as well as other European countries, have very little leverage over Gaddafi. So if we think about it that way, yes, the fate lies in the hands of the Libyan people. But we shouldn't think of the Libyan people here as a homogeneous mass. I mean, the Gaddafi regime certainly does have its supporters among the tribes, such as Gaddafi tribe, Gaddafi's own tribe. And Gaddafi will use any means possible, it seems, to try and maintain power. So while I hope this decision is that of the Libyan people, at the moment, under Gaddafi, it's very much Gaddafi vis-à-vis the Libyan people.
All right, let's put that to our Libyan guest then, Abu Bakr Degais. Does the Gaddafi regime enjoy enough support within Libya to ride this out?
Well, I mean, any sincere observer can easily understand that he has no support whatsoever. I'm shocked and amazed from the comments from the gentleman from Vienna and the lady from the US, I think, is it, that, we're speaking in this manner. Gaddafi had to use, or is using, mercenaries to fight the people. None of the military or police or secret services, or a lot of them, have refused to shoot at the Libyans. And he has rallied non-Libyans, mercenaries who, just do things for money, to kill and shoot and oppress the people. I must comment about what the gentleman said in Vienna, that matter should be left for the Libyans, yes, but not to the extent, that you arm Gaddafi to his teeth, He buys weapons from Europe. England just suspended licenses for weapons export to Libya. The other countries in millions, and he's using those weapons against unarmed civilian helpless people in Tripoli, in Benghazi, in other cities. Also, I would like to comment about that his tribe is big, or he has a great influence. His tribe is known to all Libyans. It's a small tribe. It's not a big tribe. That's for one thing. And even among the Gaddafi tribe, most of them don't really support him. We witnessed in the 80s where he killed the officer Hnesh, which is a cousin of Gaddafi, who was in command of the middle area in Libya, military command. He assassinated a lot of his relatives who did not agree on the bloody and dictatorial way he's ruling Libya. So I think, yes, the international community should leave it to Libyans to choose which way they want to go, but at the same time, to give him a free leverage that you can use anti-aircraft weapons against unarmed civilians.
Yeah, Hans Kochler, is the West here paying the price for a policy of essentially cozying up to this regime, which is now showing its true colors?
I'm afraid that this is the case. And the big problem of the Western strategy at this particular moment is that the West is not credible in what it states. The West is preaching, on the one hand, democracy and human rights, but on the other hand, engaging in a strategy vis-à-vis the entire Arab world, not only Libya, engaging in a strategy of trying to preserve the status quo because of interests of realpolitik in regard to oil supply, in regard to the Arab-Israeli conflict, but as far as Europe is concerned, also in regards to immigration. And one has been totally overlooking the basic issue of promoting or at least accepting or allowing a democratic development in the Arab world. And the problem is not just beginning now. It has begun almost 20 years ago in Algeria, when elections were stopped, as you know, around 98, 92, and a military coup was encouraged so that the party that was the strongest at the time would not be able to rule that country. And this is the predicament of the Western strategy in the Middle East and vis-à-vis Libya, a strategy which is collapsing now, which is really failing now.
All right, let's talk a bit more about that because we're going to hear another excerpt now from the Libyan leader's son. In his televised speech, Seif al-Islam condemned the Libyan uprising as a foreign plot, and he warned that if civil war ensued, the oil will stop and colonial powers would be returned to the country. Let's listen to
that. The West will not tolerate any chaos in Libya. This will bring illegal immigrants, drugs, and terrorism into Europe. They will intervene and occupy our country.
Dana Moss, what did you make of those comments? Does this smack of desperation?
I think that Seif al-Islam is relying on strategies that he has used in the past. And I'm not sure that these strategies are sufficient for today's situation. So the strategy of outright repression, co-optation, and divide and rule has been useful for the regime for the past 20, 40 years. But we're facing a new situation now. The question is, to what extent will what happened in Benghazi spread to Tripoli? So that's an open question. I don't think that we can tell just yet how successful the regime will be.
But this idea, sorry to interrupt, this idea that it's all a foreign plot and that the regime could fall into foreign hands, I mean, this was a similar strategy that the Mubarak regime was using in the middle of those protests, and as we saw, that clearly failed.
Yes, certainly. That's not the only strategy the regime is using, but clearly it doesn't look particularly credible to in the eyes of anyone who opposes the Gaddafi regime anyway, and even to Gaddafi's supporters. If you look at the official Libyan news sources, they've gone to blame the Israelis. Clearly, you can see that this is a Libyan-inspired uprising, and it does smack of desperation on the part of the Gaddafi regime.
Abu Bakr, the fact that information, independent information, has been very difficult to acquire out of Libya because of the media crackdown on and the crackdown on communication on the internet and so on. Does that give the regime more flexibility to crush the uprising with force?
Of course, what it does is to isolate the Libyans from the international community. He's trying to, well, there are no independent reporters or media in Libya. They're not allowed, and he will not allow them. And also, you know, the means which are available now, like internet, Facebook, and things like that, telephones, mobiles. He's blocking them so that no news goes out about the massacres he's committing, and the oppression he's using, the force he's using, the amount of force, the illegal weapons used against civilians. He's trying to keep this inside, and not let the outside world hear about it, because he knows now the people are more aware. The people will not tolerate, the murders and killings of civilians in the streets just because they're asking peacefully for their rights. And also for communication within the Libyans in there to stand up and organize, their rallies and their demands. So yes, he's again, he's using, every force he can, to stop things happening against him. But what I want to say is that what he said concerning the West might come in and will be occupied. He's used every card in this speech to scare and monger the Libyans. The scenario he's putting to them is either you're going to die or you are to stay within the rule of Gaddafi. He's brought in the issue of occupation. He's brought in the issue of drug addicts and looting. He's brought in the issue of East and West. Every dirty card he's tried to put on the people and scare them. And I think it will not work. People are not that stupid. People are not that ignorant. People are much more aware. People. Today we live in a world where information is, at a button click. And you can find out, and you learn. So these things do not work.
Dan Amos, I saw you nodding in agreement to some of that. You want to respond?
Yes, listen, Gaddafi has tried to blame foreign forces for as long as he could, even in previous crises. And I don't think anyone buys it anymore. The Libyan people have real issues with the regime. Corruption, unemployment, underemployment, lack of services, and ultimately the Gaddafi regime is a dictatorship. And the Libyan people, inspired by what they saw in Tunisia and in Egypt, want to have some sort of freedom, and that's understandable.
Hans Köchler, I mean, Colonel Gaddafi has been down this road before with the West, hasn't he? I mean, he went through years of being painted as a pariah to the West. So if that's the way he's going to go now, then, I mean, he's weathered that before. So essentially, he doesn't really care what the outside world thinks now, does he?
But I think the constellation has totally changed. In the 1970s and 1980s, we had a bipolar order, and the Soviet Union did still exist. And an Arab country like Libya did have to position itself in that global power structure between East and West. Now, definitely since around 20 years, and even more so since a period of 10 years, it is totally different. And Libya itself has sought a major strategic rapprochement with the West exactly since the year 2000. And it got even closer to the West than many other traditionally pro-Western countries. So to say now that, or to challenge now the Western world or the Western position for Libya will be much more difficult on that particular basis after one has already
But isn't it essentially a one-way? Sorry to interrupt. Isn't it mostly a one-way relationship? I mean, it's Libya that has the oil and the wealth. They surely have the leverage. So if the West chooses to shun them, they've got other places they can go, like China, for example.
If it is only the oil, yes, but it is also the so-called global war on terror. It is also the supposed threat of Islam, and it is, as far as Europe is concerned, of course, also the problem of the demographic development. But let me just point or draw your attention to the developments in recent years between the United Kingdom and Libya. The visits of Tony Blair in Libya did make it visible or obvious to the entire world that there is a very specific British interest in cultivating a good relationship with Libya, and it has also become clear that Libya needed the United Kingdom in its relations vis-à-vis the United States in order to re-establish its position in the international scene, and in order to secure also the system of governments that has been in place.
Mm-hmm.
That was a major strategic Libyan interest, which is behind this reversal, of course, around the year 2000.
Dana Moss in Jerusalem, how do you see this ultimately playing out? Has it reached an irreversible point?
I think it's too early to tell. I think we really have to wait and see. It depends to what extent what happened in Benghazi is duplicated in Tripoli. It depends upon to what extent the regime can rely on its usual supporters, and that those developments will play out hour by hour and day by day, and it's too early to forecast what exactly will happen. But I think that we should keep an eye out for the types of repression that Gaddafi will inevitably use. And I think that in terms of public pronouncements, the UK, the US and the EU must really ramp up what they've already said about the use of violence in Libya, because further violence can only be expected from the Gaddafi regime.
Abu Bakr in London, do you fear that there will be more violence in your country before this comes to some sort of an end?
I fear very much, and I actually, I don't know, what happens in the future, but I'm certain that Gaddafi is a bloody, brutal person, and he will not, he's unpredictable. He will not hesitate to use rockets, air force against the people, because problem with this man and his regime was it's not just getting rid of him. This man can't flee anywhere like other rulers, like Zain al-Abidin or like others. This man has no place to go to. No country will receive him. I don't think anybody in the world will welcome him for refuge or an asylum. So this man is either, his options are limited. Either he comes to a settlement with the Libyan people.
It is indeed a very disturbing and very fluid situation in Libya, and time will tell how it all develops. But we are unfortunately running out of time here, and I want to thank all three of our guests for taking part in the discussion. Abu Bakr de Gheis in London, Hans Koechler in Vienna, and Dana Moss in Jerusalem. Many thanks for your time, all three of you, for taking part in that discussion. And I want to thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. You can email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.